Welcome to AP and DP, SEC, ACC, conference coverage. My co-host, former University of California defensive back extraordinaire, DP, Doug Parrish, and I'm AP Steadham, multimedia personality from LA, Lower Alabama. Hey, Doug.
How are you, AP? Good to be back with you for another exciting week of college football.
Oh, we love it. We sure do. And there's a lot of good slate of games this week. Some highlights of the SEC. We're going to dig right in. I'm going to start off with a couple ball games, and then I'll make the handoff to you for the ACC game. So, you're ready, right? Good form, good technique. I love it.
Of that football high and tight.
High and tight, right? That's it. No fumbles. No fumbles allowed.
No fumbles today, buddy.
Doug, we have Arkansas 2-1 playing Auburn 2-1 down on the Plains, and Arkansas. I like that team, Doug, with Bobby Petrino's the offensive coordinator. I like their quarterback, the transfer Taylor Green. He can run, Doug. He had about 96 yards last week. He's big, 6'5" or so. Passing is still not as crisp as I think they like at this point, but he's a dangerous person at the quarterback position. Jaquindon Jackson, the big running back, 6'2", 230. You know, he played quarterback in high school, Doug.
Wow.
He was highly recruited from Texas, went to Texas for a minute, went to Utah, transferred to Arkansas, over 100 yards these first three games. Andrew Armstrong, the big wide receiver, 6'4". He caught 8 passes last week for 137 yards, 17-point average. So this is going to be a tough game for Auburn. They're playing at home, 3.5-point favorite. But Hank Brown, the redshirt freshman from Nashville, and so he had 4 touchdowns last week, 17 for 25, 235 yards. They beat New Mexico 45-19. Arkansas beat UAB 37-27. It was a challenging game for them, but I like this Arkansas team, Doug. They have good offense. Could they play some defense?
Well, they're going to have to play some defense because, you know, we look back at Cal versus Auburn last week. That was a tough fought game, and that game was played at home at Jordan-Hare Stadium as well.
Right.
And I was just like to say that, I mean, I thought that Auburn played very, very, very tough. It was a close game. But I think that they want to rebound this week against Arkansas to show that they are a competitive force.
Right.
In the
right.
SEC.
Yeah. Right. They beat New Mexico 45-19 last week, but they want to play this Power 5 team. It's in the SEC. It's a conference game. It's very important because Auburn's trying to get to 6 wins, Doug, and they were upset by California. So they have to win this game. If they don't, I think the Auburn fans lose a little bit of a little hope. Little hope. So Auburn's sitting at 22nd offensively, 71st on defense. Arkansas, like I said, 5th total offense, Doug, in the country, 5th in the country, 39th on defense. So they're a good ball club, and their offensive line is revamped and improved. And so, but let's watch out for Arkansas on the road with those dynamic people in the backfield, Jackson and Green, and plus on the perimeter, 6'4", 6'7". They're big. They're tough to guard.
God. That's a nightmare for a defensive back. Trust me, I know. Hey, who else do you have coming out of the SEC?
Biggest game, Doug, I think maybe Tennessee, number 6 in the country, 3-0, averaging 63 points a game. They're a 7-point favorite on the road to play Oklahoma. Doug, by chance, Josh Heupel, national championship quarterback with the Oklahoma Sooners when he played in college. Was the offensive coordinator at one time, fired by Bob Stoops. He revitalized his career, becoming the OC at Missouri, then Central Florida, the head coach, came to Tennessee. And we said, Doug, if he has his quarterback with that system, watch out. Usually prolific, and they have Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback. He is so talented. Throws a few interceptions once in a while, but they're averaging 63 points. And the competition wasn't strong. But, Doug, they are number 2 total offense in the country, number 2. And they're number two defensively. Number 2 defensively. But offense and defense, number 2 in the country. But like I said, the competition has not been strong. So Dylan Sampson, very good running back, 100 yards last week. Another running back had 100 yards for Tennessee. He's a key for them because, Doug, if you can run the football, then that passing game is wide open because they have to bring up all the people, get closer to the line of scrimmage, and your coverage suffers usually. So this Oklahoma leads the Tennessee series, Doug, 3-1. 3-1. So now Oklahoma's offense, 108th with Jackson Arnold. That's the quarterback. He's talented, dual threat. but they struggled at times. Houston a couple weeks ago, they struggled. They beat Tulane 34-19. Oh, by the way, Tennessee beat Kent State 71-0. So that's not even worth mentioning. But anyway, Oklahoma's offense 108th, defensively 27th. So they could play some good defense over there for Oklahoma. The offensive line, they have to hold the protection. That's the people I spoke to earlier in the preseason said Oklahoma maybe not ready to match up in the SEC because of their offensive and defensive lines. They are going to find out with this Tennessee team averaging 63 points a game. So big ball game for both schools because it's the first SEC game for Oklahoma, and you're playing your former national championship quarterback as the head coach of Tennessee. So those are our first couple of games we have in the SEC, Doug.
Those are some great ones, and I love that Tennessee-Oklahoma matchup. I'm looking forward to seeing that game. So on the flip side of the world, we're going to look at the ACC. Yes. All right. This week's lineup is featuring some intriguing games, AP. I'm looking forward to some matchups for the likes of North Carolina State and Clemson, two of the strong ACC teams, as well as California. My alma mater is going to be traveling across the country, in addition to Stanford, too. They're both coming this way. So look out for some interesting and intriguing games. And I'm going to be down in Tallahassee personally checking out the talents. I'm looking to see that if the defensive backs of Cal Berkeley can maintain their tenacity back there and make it difficult for the Florida State quarterback to get the ball downfield to their speedy receivers. And then we got to keep our eye on the likes of Duke and then Miami. But the two games I want to talk about right now are the Boston College versus Michigan State. Now, check it out, AP. As you know, Boston College, they shocked the world when they beat Florida State in the season opener. Bill O'Brien had his team ready and locked and loaded, ready to go and firing on all cylinders. And he's one of the best coaches, right, in college football right now. And he's new at Boston College, but he's got Jonathan Smith, who took over for the Mel Tucker at Michigan State on the other side, coaching against him. So literally, they're like two new franchises going against one another, and that's going to happen in what they call Chestnut Hill in Massachusetts. I'm sure you're familiar with that East Coast.
I am. I've been there a few times.
Yeah. So they're going to be looking to get, to control Carter, who's the running back. He's got like 60 plus yards on 2 touchdowns. So he's a big play guy. But Michigan State also has Aiden Charles. Aiden Charles, he's a good quarterback. He came from Oregon State in the Pac-12, But they also get all of these big plays, AP, but their head coach, he's really focused on them getting, these intricate plays like 4 and 6 downs or 4 and 6 yards per down versus trying to get the big play and the Hail Marys all the time. The thing that's going to be key for Michigan State, if they want to stay competitive in this game against Boston College, is they got to cut down on their penalties. In each of their last games, they've had 11 penalties, man. And they just can't afford to have penalties against a well-coached team like Bill O'Brien's Boston College.
Yeah, that's a tough matchup for them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So now it's been a long time now in terms of Clemson having a big opponent like North Carolina State, right? Clemson, Dabo Swinney, and Clemson are trying to get their mojo back, if you will. Right? Last game, I was watching them, and they seemed to have a little bit of pep in their step, like they were ready to be the Clemson of old. So we're going to see if Mack Brown, head coach of North Carolina State, can have his team ready to go against the Clemson Tigers. Now, the defense of North Carolina State, they have some exotic blitzes, right? So they're going to try to keep Clemson off balance when they're on offense. But having those exotic defenses allows the cornerbacks to cheat, right? So they're running all these stunts with the D linemen and the linebackers up front. And so now those defensive backs, as a former defensive back, that's just like music to my ears. And also,
Right.
Carolina State, actually, AP, is looking to start a freshman quarterback by the name of C.J. Bailey. Okay, he's tall, he's athletic, and so they're going to be riding him and trying to maintain some consistency on the offense with Antonio Williams, who's one of their top running backs. But one of the key aspects of this game will be on special teams. And as you know, if these games are tight, and they're tight in terms of, offense versus defense and then scoring, the field position becomes magnitude, right? It becomes
magnified. Sure does. Oh yes.
Magnified to the highest degree. And whoever can have that good field position and be able to flip the field will be able to win the game.
Yeah, two tough games. I know you meant to say Dave Dorn, North Carolina State, Mac Brown, same state, North Carolina, but Dave Dorn at North Carolina State. But that's okay. That's okay. Those both in the same state. But anyway, those are a couple of good ball games there. Clemson, I think these last couple of years, Doug, when I watched them, and they struggled at the quarterback position with Cade Klubnik, but he had a good ball game a few weeks back, and North Carolina State, they were pulverized by Tennessee and the SEC, but these are two of the better teams in the conference normally. So sure. I know it's always a big game, even though Clemson's a big favorite.
Yes.
So, but anyhow, so I'm looking at a couple of games in the SEC, Doug. Vanderbilt versus Missouri. Now, Vanderbilt, Doug, they started off well. We're upset last week in Atlanta, Georgia, by Georgia State, beat them 36-32. Vanderbilt's quarterback, Diego Pavia, he actually played against Missouri when he was at New Mexico State a few years ago, Doug. They lost the game 45-14, but he was 6 for 17, 76 yards, 1 interception, no touchdowns. So I know that Diego, he's brought a lot of enthusiasm to that offense because Vanderbilt struggles mightily last year. Defensively, they're still trying to find themselves, but offensively, maybe he gives Missouri a better game than he did when he was at New Mexico State because the talent is slightly improved. But Missouri is one of the top teams, number 7 in the country. They're favored by 20 points, Doug, in Columbia. Wow. So Cook and Luther, Cook the quarterback, and Luther Burden the third, one of our favorites, wide receiver. They're very tough, very tough to guard and contain that wide receiver. Plus, he's good on special teams as well. So yes, I look for Missouri to win the game. 18th in offense. They're 4th in defense, Missouri, right now. The competition hasn't been stiff, but that's where they are in the standings right now. Vanderbilt's offense is 89th, defense is 46, which those are improvements from last year, Doug.
Yeah.
But I don't think they could overcome this Missouri team at home.
Interesting.
So moving on to Florida. Florida will play Mississippi State. Now those teams are both struggling. Florida's is on the road in Starkville. They're a 6-point favorite over Mississippi State. Mississippi State very disappointed with their effort against Toledo. Lost at home, 41-17. 41 points a MAC team put on an SEC team. That shouldn't happen. Even if you get upset,
never.
You shouldn't allow 41 points to a MAC team. MAC league is good. Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame in South Bend this year, 13-12. But that shouldn't happen. So
you got to keep playing.
Yeah. Florida's coming off a 33-20 loss to Texas A&M University in Gainesville. So we're going to see what happens with Florida. They have Graham Mertz at quarterback, the transfer from Wisconsin, DJ Lagway, the talented freshman, but they're a 6-point favorite. They'll probably win. I would say they would win this game, but Mississippi State, you're looking for them to play much better and motivated to have a better performance, especially at home when you have a conference game. So Mississippi State, 114th in offense, which Jeff Lebby, he's new there, but he's an offensive guru. 94th in total defense. Florida, 72nd in offense and 106th in defense. So those are the two games I have in the SEC.
Okay, rock and roll. I'm going to go ahead and transition to Virginia Tech against Rutgers. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, Virginia Tech has the most havoc-minded defense in the country. Overall, they're ranked number 19, AP. And guess what? 17 pass deflections defended and 18 tackles for loss and 3 fumble recoveries.
Those are good numbers.
Red Eye's defense is firing on all cylinders, as I like to say. And so, they're also, as an ACC team, they're looking to find a way to win these games, because it's going to be so competitive down the stretch. And Rutgers needs to win, but because this will give them a good opportunity to continue with their average per yards. They average about eight yards per carry, and this should all work against the squishy defense of Virginia Tech. Now, I'm telling you, Virginia Tech had a hard time with the scrambling quarterback. All right. And when they played Vanderbilt, you talked about Vanderbilt. So they have to show up. Right. And last year, only 5 teams converted as many third downs as they did. And they were all against good teams like Michigan State, Penn State, Iowa, and Wisconsin. So who will win? This will be a game that will be fought in the trenches. There's a lot of teams that are out there that are trying to knock off each other, and this is going to be very competitive. Virginia Tech against Rutgers. And here's a good one here, AP, for you. Stanford versus Syracuse. Friday night lights. This is not high school football, brother. This is
West Coast, East Coast.
West Coast, East Coast rivalry, man. These, hey, get on a plane, travel all day, coming on the East Coast. You lose 2 hours. I mean, come on. Troy Taylor, my old quarterback from Cal Berkeley, he's going to have his team firing on all cylinders against the good Syracuse defense because the Orangemen are coming out to play. This is the first year that Stanford is in the ACC, and so Syracuse is going to look to have their offense out there on the field a lot because that's going to, quite frankly, going to be the story of the game, AP, in this game. It's going to be Syracuse's offense. Now, Stanford, Troy Taylor's an offensive-minded coach. He's got a good QB who can run the ball and pass the ball. But at the end of the day, it's going to be all about the Syracuse offense. And I think that if they can maintain a competitive, low-scoring game, Stanford may have a shot. But if they let it get out of hand, Syracuse is going to blow them out the water, and they're going to have a long flight home back to California.
Flight home, right? Wow, that's pretty tough. So Doug, I'm just going to continue with a couple of games here in the SEC.
Okay.
UCLA out of the Big Ten. Yeah, I said Big Ten. UCLA. They're traveling to LSU to play in Baton Rouge.
Sure.
They played. LSU played them out there in California. Lost that game a number of years ago. But UCLA, they took a beating, Doug, from Indiana at home in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, 42-13. So they're having so much difficulty scoring points. UCLA and Eric Bieniemy's out there as the OC, and so they're
former
looking to have a
chief
big
offensive
offensive coordinator. So they're looking for a big turnaround. Their offense is 124th, Doug. 124th. There's only 133, 134 FBS teams. 124 offensively. And defensively, they're 81st. LSU offense is 66, and their defense, Doug, we saw improvement, but it still has a long way to go. They're 91st in total defense. So LSU is a big favorite at home, 23.5 points. Like I say, UCLA is 1-1. LSU is 2-1. They played USC to open the season. And Doug, I don't know if there's another team besides Notre Dame that has played UCLA and USC in a non-conference game the same season. So that's I couldn't find anybody, but maybe there's been a team that has scheduled those two teams in the same year. But LSU should be a big winner. I don't think they're going to be able to guard all those receivers for LSU. UCLA gave up 40 points to Indiana at home. LSU's playing in Baton Rouge. It's difficult to win there And so this will be an SEC domination, I believe, unless LSU doesn't take them seriously. So moving on to the next game, Doug, it's Kentucky hosting Ohio U out of the MAC conference, of course. Ohio University 2-1 beat Morgan State 21-6. Kentucky's a 20-point favorite. They lost that incredible defensive ball game to Georgia, 13-12. Kentucky lost by 1 point. That was quite an effort defensively. They're sitting at 1-2, 0-2 in the conference. Their offense is 129th, Doug, 129th, Kentucky. So they have a new offensive coordinator, Brock Vandegrift. They can't seem to be sympathetic. There's no coordination with this offense right now. They're just can't score points. They had 12 points last week, 6 points the week before, 18 points in 2 games in college is not going to work. There's no simpatico going on in Kentucky with their offense. Defensively, they're ninth, playing pretty good defense, Doug. I know, you played the number 1 team, you held them to 13 points. You gave yourself every opportunity to upset the number 1 team. Of course, Ohio is 75th in offense, 74th in defense. So Kentucky should get on track with another victory, but you'd like to see them put up 40 points.
Yeah.
50 points. I like to see them put up 50 points.
Yeah.
If they can with this, because there's such a drought on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
And you have Brock Vandegrift. He's a capable quarterback, but you have to block for him, and he needs the support from all his receivers and tight ends and running backs. So, but that's the next 2 games on the SEC schedule.
All right, the next 2 games I have, AP, is TCU versus SMU. Now, I know you're probably thinking, SMU, death penalty. No, they are back, and they are back in the ACC. This is their first year. There were 3 teams that were entering the ACC this year: Cal, Stanford, and of course, SMU is the other one. Now, this game is a rivalry game. This game is called the Iron Skillet. It's the Iron Skillet rivalry. TCU will travel to Gerald Ford, one of our former presidents, Gerald Ford Stadium in Dallas, Texas. Think about that, to play against the SMU Mustangs. This is a tradition game. So this is a game that definitely both of these teams want to play and win. Their pressure is like insurmountable. They're trying to really get their name back into the top of the teams in the country, that SMU that is, and particularly TCU for that matter, because TCU was one of those dominant teams a couple of years ago. Coach Sonny Dykes, who was a former coach at Cal, actually had his team rocking and rolling and firing on all cylinders, but they're going to have to look out. The quarterback for TCU is going to have to look out for SMU's bright safety. He's a dynamic player. His name is Brian Macy, and he's been having some good games lately. And of course, I'm partial to defensive backs, but the quarterback from TCU is going to have to look him off because he's a ball hawk. Now, my second game, AP, which you will be delighted to know, is that Pittsburgh, who plays in Pittsburgh, where the Pittsburgh Steelers play, Pitt versus Youngstown State. Now, Pitt is looking for the first time in so many years, they want to start 4-0. And I don't know, because they have a red shirt freshman leading the helm. And but he threw for over 300 yards in the last couple of games. So the first 3 games, head coach Pat Narduzzi, who I met down at the ACC Media Days, he's very pleased with this young man, to be honest with you. But Youngstown State is going to have to win the game in the trenches, AP. It's going to be offensive line versus defensive line. And, I think that, these guards and these big players in the middle, they're going to have to come up and we're going to see who's going to be the most physical, because the Penguins, they had about 315 yards last game, total yards in that game that they played. It should be an exciting game, but Pitt should open up they should be the huge home favorite against Youngstown State in this epic game that they're going to play. 25-point favorite. That Eli Holstein, I think he played at Alabama. It's from Louisiana, transferred to Pittsburgh, I believe. All right. I think that's the same person. Right, yeah. All right.
Alabama's had so many quarterbacks transfer. There's a whole roster of them. You can't keep up.
That's
But
right.
anyhow, next couple games, Georgia Southern versus Ole Miss. We know that Ole Miss is number 5 in the country. Ole Miss is a huge favorite, 35.5-point favorite over Georgia Southern. It's really a warm-up game. The interesting fact about this game, I would say, besides, the point spread, it's one of those games where you're probably not going to watch, but the two coaches were both head coaches at Southern California, Clay Helton and
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin. They
Yeah.
were
Like
both head coaches. So Ole Miss's
sure.
offense, not much competition these first a few ball games. Number 1 in the country, offense, total offense, number 1. Number 1. We have the number 1 offense, Ole Miss, number 2 offense, Tennessee in the same conference. Defensively, they're 22nd. They haven't allowed a touchdown in 3 games. So they're just going to be, it's a tune-up game. You'd categorize it versus Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern coming off a win over South Carolina State. They're 2-1, 42-14. So, and Ole Miss, they dominated against Wake Forest on the road. I covered that game. You could see that their receiver core is one of the best in the conference, if not the country. Jackson Dart, he's a dual threat. I'd be careful about him. He likes to run once in a while, put his head down. That's not the best for his team. He needs to protect his health. But they
Yes.
have Henry Parrish Jr. is a running back, very good. And Trey Harris, the transfer wide receiver from Louisiana Tech. This is second year with the Ole Miss team, outstanding. So Ole Miss, they shored up that defensive line. They have length and size that they did not have in the past. So that's a good-looking 2 games that we have right there, I believe.
Nice. Well, I have a rival game here for you, AP. So you got the ACC opponent, Georgia Tech. They are 3-1. Guess who they're playing? Louisville, who's number 19, and they are undefeated at 2-0. Louisville is actually favorite to win this game, although Georgia Tech is ranked number 6 in points scored with the average of 36.5 points.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. Georgia Tech, they're ranked up there, but Louisville is ranked up there, but they're going to have a tough time against the Georgia Tech opponent. And I'm just thinking to myself, the offense, they're ranked high, but they're going to have to really, really show up and show out against that Louisville's defense. Like I said, and on the flip side, Louisville is averaging 327 yards per game with about 9.5 yards per attempt, and they're 4th in the nation. Louisville's offense is. So you talk about these powerhouses that are first, number 1, number 2 in the country. Well, you got Louisville coming right behind you. So that's one of the big rival games. Check this out, AP. You're going to love this one. You talk about Florida and me going down to Tallahassee. Well, Miami plays South Florida. Now, people may mistake South Florida as a small team, but they're not. This is a fight against the Sunshine State. This is a big, huge matchup. This is for the bragging rights. Come on, AP. It doesn't get any bigger and brighter than that. Hey, so the students are so excited, AP. They sold 14,000 student tickets.
For South Florida. Wow.
Yeah. So they are ready, and they played Alabama too, right? So they gave Alabama very tough.
So last 6 minutes, right? Last 6 minutes they had to break away.
So this is no underdog, right? As they are a serious contender, and so I'm looking forward to seeing how Miami can regroup and get themselves ready to play a competitive game. They are ranked number 8 in the country, Miami, that is. And like I said, they broke the student record. There's going to be packed. Quarterback Cam Ward is a big, durable quarterback, and he's going to be slanging that rock, man, and possibly trying to run for some first downs. But Alec Gulch, the head coach for USF, he's fired up, and he's ready for this Florida rivalry.
Yeah, those are 2 teams that when they beat the other, there's a little bit of advantage. They can use those bragging rights to recruit a little bit better.
Absolutely.
So yeah, South Florida, they gave Alabama all they wanted for 2 straight years.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're back to the SEC. I guess Doug, I shorted your last conversation. I thought I gave you 2 games, but I guess I gave you 1. But I'm going to finish up with 3 games, and then we'll talk about the teams that have the bye after you discuss some ACC games as well. But
okay.
Akron faces South Carolina. Akron's 1-2. They lost to they beat Colgate 31-20. Offensively, Akron is 120th in the country. Defensively, 93rd. South Carolina is 2-1. They had a great effort against LSU. Doug, they were winning 17-zip against the Tigers. The Tigers came all the way back, won that game 36-33. South Carolina, I'm sure they suffered through those blues all week because they had the Tigers exactly where they wanted them with a 17-point lead on the road, and they let it escape. So South Carolina, 115th in offense, Doug, and 50th in defense. So they're looking to rebound with a big victory over Akron. They're from the MAC. They're 28-point favorites. So they're working out that quarterback situation. Lenore Sellers got hurt last week. That Robbie Asher came in relief. The transfer from Oregon and Auburn previously. Those were his other schools. So South Carolina, they're trying to improve as a program, but that hurt, Doug. That one really hurt. 17 points on LSU. You have them on the road and you lose the ball game. And you gave up 36 points. So moving on, Louisiana Monroe, 2-0, and they're 113th in offense. Louisiana Monroe, defensively 32nd. Texas, they're playing University of Texas. Their offense is 10th in the country. They're the number 1 team in the country, Doug. 44.5-point favorite over Louisiana Monroe. This is another practice session for Texas. Be better with your rhythm in the passing game. You're blocking up front, your techniques. You're running the football, no turnovers. You're making all your field goals defensively. You're putting pressure on the quarterback, stuffing the run. Defensively, you're guarding everybody in the with the defensive backs, and the linebackers are being active and filling the right gap. So Texas, coming off a big victory over University of Texas San Antonio, 3-0, number 1 team in the country. So, like I said, just a practice game for them. We'll finish up with the game. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to just share that Manning kid. I mean,
right? I'm glad you brought him up. We should mention him. That's right. Arch Manning came in the game as a reserve. Quinn Ewers had an abdominal issue, pull, I believe. So Arch Manning had that big run. 67 yards. He looked like his granddaddy and his dad. His dad was a wide receiver, Cooper. Cooper was a wide receiver. So his dad could run. He was able to elude defenders as a wide receiver, had over 1,000 yards, high school, his senior year. He was all scheduled to play at Ole Miss, and then he had that neck situation, spinal stenosis, I guess is the term for what aggravated him. But so Arch Manning, dual threat quarterback. We'll see if he plays this week. I think he will.
Yeah.
So, but Texas, big favorite, number 1. They are the Longhorns are feeling good about themselves. The last game, actual game, Doug, is the Bowling Green 1-1. They played. This is an interesting game because they're playing Texas A&M University. Okay.
Right.
Bowling Green has a quarterback, Connor Bazelak, who was the SEC co-freshman of the year, Doug, at Missouri. Played there for 3 seasons, transferred, played at Indiana. So he's not afraid to play against these SEC teams. Bowling Green played at Penn State the very first game, lost 34-27. They put 27 points on Penn State, Doug. Woo. So if I was Texas A&M and they're a 22-point favorite, I would be careful of this game.
Absolutely.
Because if you have a quarterback that is fearless playing against an SEC team, they have a chance. Of course, they have to play some defense. But that's a game to keep your eye on because Texas A&M is not a dominant team. They used their freshman quarterback on the road. He had a great ball game. Marcel Reed, 11 for 17, 178 yards through the air, 13 for 84, 1 rushing TD. He had 2 passing TDs, so he accounted for 3 touchdowns. Good-looking freshman, Marcel Reed. Connor Wegman was injured. I don't know if he's going to play this week, but regardless, if they have Marcel Reed at quarterback, he'll be playing at home. I think the fans will be excited about him. They had a 20-point lead against Florida on the road. They hadn't won a SEC road game in a while. So Texas A&M, 22.5-point favorite against Bowling Green. But just watch that quarterback. If he has some success early, that is not a good sign for the Aggies.
Interesting. That's some interesting tidbits you got there for us, AP. Now I'm going to round this thing off with my last couple of games here. Duke versus Middle Tennessee. Now, Manny Diaz, who's the head coach at Duke, he's looking to be 4-0. I mean, can you imagine Duke 4-0? Okay, we know Duke's good in basketball, but football, yeah, So, but they've been struggling to run the ball, but hopefully if they can get that ground game intact, they will be a dominant team to reckon with. Now, on the side of Middle Tennessee, they have a pretty cool and talented running back by the name of Malik Murphy. He is actually a transfer from Texas. So,
on Duke for Duke, right? The Duke quarterback.
Yeah. So,
Nick, big guy, big and talented.
This Nick Viato, he's a redshirt junior. He was invited to the Manning camp, and he has a 65% passing average. So, looking for the transfer portal has definitely allowed these teams to be more effective, and there's more parity among all of these teams. So when you're looking at these teams, like I say all the time, you looked at a team from last season, they may have been dominant, but guess what? Some of those key players that were on that dominant team have transferred and made these other teams just as effective. I will say this, AP, North Carolina is going to be an interesting game, and I think James Madison is going to be they're 2-0, right? So North Carolina, they're 3-0. So these are two undefeated teams. Just to round out our SEC ACC coverage for today, the keys to win is going to be this Jacoby Griswold from the quarterback, from North Carolina, and he's going to have to step up. Mac Brown, he's a legendary coach. He's got his team ready to go. They're averaging about 161 yards per game in the air. Last game he had 1 TD, so he's ready to. He needs to get it up there a little bit higher in terms of production. But in terms of like James Madison competing with North Carolina, they're going to have some big stops on defense, and they're going to have some key interceptions, and they're second in the red zone again, so they're gonna have to bring the hat.
Yeah, it's only a 10.5 point favorite, North Carolina, an ACC team versus James Madison. Yeah. I'm interested in the ACC, Doug. Malik Murphy, you mentioned that name for Duke, the quarterback from Texas. He's from California. He has Vince Young-like physical stature. He's big and talented. I'm intrigued to watch him throughout this season, Malik Murphy, the quarterback from Duke. But, Doug, I just want to wrap it up by saying Georgia and Alabama have a bye. They will play each other the following week. Alabama went up to Wisconsin and beat them mightily, putting 42 points on the Badgers, 42-10. And Georgia, they escaped with that 1-point victory in Lexington, Kentucky. Right. So I know those teams are focused in now. The big matchup people have been discussing in the preseason, it's going to be arriving next season. We'll have a lot of fun discussing those two SEC powerhouses next week.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you very much, AP.
We thank you, AP and DP, the SEC, ACC conference coverage. We'll be back next week with another edition of our show. Thank you very much.